the Finance Committee meeting. Facilities is to come. Tonight, we will start with public comment. The Pennridge School Board welcomes public comment. According to policy 903, we remind everyone of the following. Public comment shall be limited to 3 minutes unless otherwise specified by the board. Participants must be recognized by the presiding officer and note their name and municipality. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer rather than to individual board members, district employees, or members of the public. The speaker may speak once during each comment period. Please note that these sessions are designed for comments to protect the confidentiality and privacy rights of all members of our community. The board encourages members of the public to direct any comments regarding particular individuals, such as students or district employees, privately to the superintendent or other appropriate administrators or board members, or to communicate with the board and superintendent privately by sending an email to psdschoolboard@pennridge.org. Questions raised and not addressed may be followed up at a later time. At this point, are there those who would like to make public comment? If so, please come to the podium. Give us your name and municipality. Seeing all too few of you rushing the podium, we'll move on to the agenda. So the first part of the agenda is our normal review of contracts for approval. There are 3 on here tonight. Mr. Daubert, can you give us kind of an overview of these 3 items?
Okay, the first contract is Sweet, Stevens, Katz, and Williams. This is the legal services consultation agreement. This is for next year, 18-19. The cost is $12,000. Same cost as the 17-18, and this is the firm that mainly handles the special education legal services for the district. The second contract is the Upper Bucks Technical School. This is for the shared food service director. This is the agreement that's been in place. This will be the 3rd year this agreement's in place. The Upper Bucks CTC will pay the district $10,000, and Mrs. Geritano will provide those food service director services to the VOTEC school. And the 3rd contract is the Music Theater International. This is for next school year's production at North Middle School, and I believe this is Lion King. Yep, Lion King Jr. To be performed at the, like I said, the North Middle School, and the cost is $993.50.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions or comments from board members? Okay, then these will appear on our March 14th board agenda. So let's move on to the second set of items, and that would be the bid results, the financial bid results.
We have,
Albert?
sure, Dr. Now we have some bid results for transportation department this month. Next month we'll have a lot of bids from Jeff's department and the business office bids for various supplies and so forth. But we're starting this year with the transportation department first. Listing of bids or the brake part bids, and you can see all the different brake parts. The items in yellow on the handout are the selected vendor or the selected price. And there are some items that are colored in blue, and they're in blue because those items do not meet the specifications as written by our transportation department for the quality of the parts. So, okay. The second listing is engine and transmission parts. Same theory here. You can see all the different prices for all the different parts. The items that are in yellow, shaded in yellow, are the chosen items, and again, some items in light blue. And the same reason being that those items either are not stocked by a company or they have a difficult time with that company getting deliveries and so forth. So we have a bit of a history with these companies, and it's we like to make sure that we're working with companies that are most responsive and actually stock the parts and actually can provide them to us on a very short turnaround. So That's brake parts. The next one is vehicle batteries. Two different types of batteries, group 31. You can see the low bid is Coopersburg Kenworth. The price for the battery, and then the core cost is actually a credit back to the district for the core. So you have a cost of the battery and then a credit for the core. And the second item, the group 3478 double terminal battery. We picked the battery warehouse. We're not satisfied with the product from Coopersburg Kenworth on that for the double terminal battery. So we're picking the warehouse battery for that. And both of these, the first one is actually prices lower than we're paying this year, and the second one for prices that matched this year. So those are the batteries. And the fourth one is the BCIU tire bid. So all the districts within the BCIU come together and bid the tires together. The chosen vendor is Hennis, hopefully I said that right, for the hand-cooked tires. You can see each of the different tires listed there. And then it's the same vendor which is chosen for the tire recapping. You can see the different sizes of tires. And again, we do have one company shaded in blue there that really hasn't met our needs as far as being able to service the districts in a timely fashion and provide the tires as we need them. So if there's any questions on any of these bids, Mr. Duke is here tonight, so if anyone has any questions,
Can y'all speak up a little bit? Use your microphones.
Thank you, Mrs. Furlong.
You're welcome. Just a friendly reminder.
Actually, the pricing looks pretty good in these, from what I'm looking at.
All right.
So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, Carl.
Any other questions on these bids? If not, they also will appear on the May 14th agenda for approval. So we will move on to the meat of tonight's program, if you will. And that, of course, is the budget review. And we have two presentations tonight, the first of which is the program improvement and curriculum and instruction. Dr. Scheid will be giving that. So Dr. Scheid, you're on.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, I am here to review the budget for next year for the Office of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment. This first page is a look at from 2015-16 to 18-19. The first slide there, and you'll see the 16-17 actuals. So we're looking at the program improvement budget. The actual that year was $345,747.43, and the curriculum budget, they're the two budgets in my office, the actual was $200,626.57. This current year 17-18 budget, as you can see, program improvement was $403,634. The curriculum office budget was $197,994. Next year's budget, and I'll go through this on the next slide with the variance, is $321,415 for program improvement and $166,932 for the curriculum office budget. So the total decrease by percentage for program improvement is 20%, and for the curriculum office it's 15%, and then I'll proceed to explain that. Again, we're reporting actuals for 16-17. 17-18's program improvement budget, $305,634. Next year's budget for program improvement is a decrease to $271,415. There's a difference of the $34,000. And the variance is explained this year. There's variance in program improvement every year. The variance this year is we did remove the social studies middle school books. They were $53,100, so that's the decrease there. And then you'll see textbook replacement, which is always part of program improvement, and over the years it's always been budgeted at $98,000. That's really based on it was a cycle, a 5-year cycle when I came here. And that would be for all of the departments for textbook replacement. We're at the end of that cycle, and I reviewed the cost and what we spent last year. So I decreased that from 98 to 50, so there's a $48,000 difference there. So you can see that the total budget is a decrease of 20.37%. The curriculum office budget, the actuals in 16-17 were $200,626.57, and then this year, $197,994, and then we have a budget proposal for $166,932 for 18-19, so there's a difference of $31,000. So it's about 15%, almost 16% decrease, and then there's the variance, our cyber learning. We have increased the cost for that, but I'm going to explain that on the next slide because I've pretty good, positive news to share in that regard. Our travel expenses for elementary and secondary actually were not enough, so we did increase those. We had $2,185 for staff development and employee training last year, so we increased that to $20,000, so that's $17,815. We decreased our printing costs by $500, the meetings across the district refreshments by $500. We're not using FitnessGram, we eliminated that. That's a health and PE app, and thanks to our health and PE teachers, they've created their own, so we're not going to use that, so that's $1,700. Our summer school transportation, the cost remains the same. It's just been removed from my budget, and it's now in the transportation budget. The curriculum writing and PD was moved to the salary budget and off of the curriculum office budget. And other professional services, I removed that based on what we did and did not use last year. So that's a total of just about 16%. So the next slide is actually an explanation I wanted to share. You know, you're seeing that I'm increasing cyber costs, cyber learning costs, but I want to share what's actually been happening and how much we've actually saved. So, over the past few years, we have worked very hard to create our own cyber program at Pennridge. We are not fully there for a cyber program run strictly by our teachers. However, we have been providing students who would either leave the district to go to a cyber charter school or were in a cyber charter school and we're trying to bring them back. And Kara Garish has done a remarkable job. She and I have held parent meetings, inviting families in who their students attend cyber charter schools, helping them understand what we can offer here, trying to get the word out, so the communication, and we've been relatively successful. So what this chart isn't totally straightforward. The numbers, the savings part is, but I have to explain it because it's not a one-for-one. So in 2016-17, we had 14 students total. We were able to retain 13 of those students who would have left the district, and then we returned one. So there was a cost savings of $68 to $12.94. This year, number of students were at 30. So we were able to retain 22 students, and that means we have the word out in all of the schools. If students or families are saying, oh, you know what, I think my child really needs a cyber option, we need to be involved to say we can offer that cyber option. So that is what the retained number of students is. And then we were able to bring back 8 students who were in a cyber program and then come back. So that was a total of 224, 394, 64 this year. We estimate next year at 40. So that would be almost a $300,000 savings. We also, for the first time, we're very excited because, and this has taken some time, and we've been explaining why we use Canvas, why we have a learning management system. So next year, for the first time, we will be having cyber seats in 2 courses, an English course and a history course. It's world history and 8th grade English. We already know students who we are currently paying outside service for those students through Fuel Ed. Those courses now will be taught by Pennridge teachers. So there is no additional cost for those particular courses for next year. So that's our starting point. That will save $4,466. Now, to explain it, a regular education student who would go to a cyber charter school, the district would be charged for a year about $735. For a special ed student, which aren't even calculated in this because that's not part of my budget, although we work with the special ed department to help bring the students back and keep them here, that's $28,000. So if you look at the estimated 40 and then try to use these numbers down here, they're not going to work. Because it's such a combination of students we're dealing with here, it's not, we have those students all year. We could have them for a semester. We can have them for both semesters. We could have them for partial semesters. We can have them for 2 courses, and they're in a blended learning, so they're in the high school for part of the day, face-to-face, yet they could be having cyber courses too. So it's not a one-for-one here. What I wanted to explain is the total amount of money that was either cost savings avoidance for this year, which is $224,000, and next year close to $300,000. So when I asked for a relatively small increase in the cyber learning, the $14,000, it's because we calculated what we expect to need for next year. But we're excited that over time, we will not be as reliant as we are on outside services as we will on for our own teachers teaching this class. And that's really what we want. We want our students to have a Pennridge experience. So that is what that means. And I just wanted to put that in there just as an update because we've talked about what we're doing here, but these are the actual numbers. Okay. These are what we, in the curriculum office budget, this is showing you we use typing agent. The $15,000 is Canvas renewal. Printing and binding services, our Act 93 travel is always the same at $1050, or at least it has been. The $600, the supplies, we have our Linkit renewal. OTS is our, it's our library of all the professional development that teachers sign up for. So that's a $2,500 renewal. We have our curriculum offices and supplies and our meeting and workshop refreshments, and that's for the district. We also have a Peace Center donation of $1,000 each year. That comes out of the curriculum office budget. Our supplies for summer school are at $1,200, and then our professional development, our staff development is at $20,000, and they're the budget codes for the curriculum office. I'm sorry, I think I went ahead there. So just so everybody can see what I was saying. All right. So now we have our total budget. We are, our 17-18 budget total was 601,628, and our 18-19 is 488,347, with 281 decrease at almost 19% decrease for next year. Oh, that's the end of the presentation, so
Okay.
I'm here for questions.
Questions from board members? No? Well, I have a comment,
Okay.
Dr. Scheid. I am not in favor of removing this $53,000 line item for the program improvement for the 6th and 7th graders. I think that's an important constituent that should continue, and I realize that the sudden disapproval of the book at a meeting on Monday night of the end of April threw that into a bit of uncertainty, but I do believe we should revisit that and approve what we can and make sure that those students, instead of working with very old textbooks, which are strictly bound textbooks, they have the online resources and newer textbooks to work with. So that's my opinion on your budget.
Thank you.
I would like to say that I agree with Dr. Yarnow. The social studies program improvement proposal that was rejected included 2 different books. One was for 6th grade, was History Alive, The Ancient World, and that has a 2004 copyright, and it's a book, it has no online resources. So the updated book would have online resources, and there were no objections to that book by anyone. So I'm hoping that we can bring that back to a discussion. And then the other book was discussed a lot, and I'm still hoping that even if we can't have that book, that there can be another book that can be approved for the 7th graders, especially since we're purchasing classroom laptops for the 7th graders so that they can have, use online resources. And right now, the social studies has a book with a 2007 copyright as opposed to a 2019 copyright, which comes with a lot of online and interactive resources. So I agree with Dr. Yarnow. So even if it's not that book or those books, I think that we should work to try and get resources for the students.
Mr. Kraus.
Dr. Yarnell, thank you. I agree with you, Dr. Yarnell and Mrs. Yardley, that we should keep the funding there for the program improvement while we continue to search for a textbook that is that we can all agree on. Okay, so I'm in favor of keeping the funding, as you've suggested, in the budget moving forward.
Any other questions for Dr. Scheid? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Dalbert, it's your turn.
Okay. Mic on. So we are at May 2nd, and we're taking our 4th look at the budget. At this point, our goals for this budget presentation, of course, are to review the status of the 18-19 budget, discuss the options to balance the budget again, as we did last month, and we have to define a path to move forward to Monday night, May 14th. That's the first vote on the budget. That would be the proposed final budget. When that budget then is in place, then there is a second vote in June. But our goal here tonight will be to come to some conclusion as a group as to how we move forward to that vote on next Monday night, and put a budget in place, or at least a proposed final budget in place. And then, as I said before, you can make changes between the proposed final in May and the final in June. Our clock is ticking, and we just need to have a May budget and then a final June budget. I show you this in every presentation. I think it's very important that I continue to show you the Act 1 index and the millage rates that are allowed. The millage rate that we are at now, 135.255. The cost of that millage rate to the property owner of that has the median assessed value, about $4,100. And then what the Act 1 index allows each year, this year it's 2.4%, as we've talked about before. That additional millage is 3.2 mils. And that the impact on that median assessed value property owner would be about $103. The 2.4%, or just over 3 mils, if put in place, would bring in about 1.9, almost $2 million of additional tax revenue. So the board always has the option to increase taxes to that index, but it cannot go over that index. So those are very important numbers that we should always have in our mind and continue to go over. So since we met last on April 11th and went through the budget, we haven't made any changes to the revenue side of the budget. We are waiting for final allocations of the state basic education funding, then the state special education funding, and also the property tax reduction allocation. The first two we will not know until the state passes a budget, and that's anybody's guess as to when that will happen. The third number, the property tax reduction number, we're supposed to have by May 1st. We haven't received it yet, but we should have it in the next couple of days. And then, if you remember, that amount of money reduces property taxes dollar for dollar. So and that's where the homestead farmstead comes into play, and that median assessed value comes into play. So that's why we use those numbers as targets. So what we've done since we met on April 11th on the expenditure side is we increased our legal fees by $130 or $130,000 to account for the increase in the hourly rate of the solicitor from $145 to what we're paying right now, which is $275. And then we did decrease the program improvement budget, which we were just talking about, by the $53,100 to remove the middle school social studies textbook replacement, since that was voted on by the board at the last meeting. So those are the two changes that we've made. So where does that leave us at this point? Second to the last column on the right is our May 2nd date. Revenue is $137,553. Our expenditures are $138,218, and our expenditures exceed our revenue by $664,794, which is up from April 11th at $587, and the reason is the numbers we just went over a minute ago. So the budgeted expenditures now exceed budgeted revenues by 0.483%. That deficit is equal to 1.0746 mils, which is about 0.7945%. And the increase per property at the median assessed value is $33.18. Okay. Local revenues, state revenues, and federal revenues, exactly the same from the April 11th presentation that we went through. So no changes in this slide. On the expenditure side, we do have two line items that change from April 11th to May 2nd. We have the 300 purchase professional services line, which is up by the $130,000, and we have the 600 line, which is supplies. That's where textbooks fall under, and that line is down from last month by $53,100. This is the requested position that are in next year's budget. These positions are all included in the budget. And what we've done is we've ranked these positions as the board asked. And our methodology of ranking is number one is based on student enrollment needs and special education program needs. So the .8 English as a second language, .4 music, all based on enrollment needs. The 1.4 high school teachers, based on enrollment needs in the math and business education departments. And at the bottom, the 1 autistic teacher, the 1 learning support teacher, and the 1 autistic support teacher assistant are all based on enrollment within the special education program in the autistic department and the learning support department. Items with a 2 are based on student safety or support of current academic programs that are already in place. We have the 2 part-time security officers, which we spoke about last month, the trainer, which we spoke about, the 2 individuals needed for technology support. And we are looking at bringing those folks in under a contracted service. Diane is working on that, and that looks very promising, that's how we'll do that, but I wanted to keep them on this list so that we didn't lose them from our discussion. And that is it for the items with number 2. Number 3 is any items or positions that are based on additional programs that are not currently in place or existing in the district. And the 3s are our 2 STEM teachers from the program improvement program, the 2 librarians from program improvement, and the 2 world language teachers from the program improvement. So that's how we came up with our determination of our rankings. Okay, is there any questions on any of those?
I have a question. It's not on here, but we also were talking about getting an SRO, right, a school resource
Yes.
officer at the high school, so that's not on here. Where is that in the budget? That's
We've-
in a different place?
Yeah, we placed the SRO under the professional services line item last month, and it was an ad there from, it's under the 300 line item, and we added that from our March 14th meeting to our April 11th meeting. We added the SRO, so it's still there.
Okay,
Yep.
great, thank you. I just wanted to make one, I have one other question. As far as the elementary program improvement, the STEM teachers need to go along with the world language teachers, correct, in order to make that work? Right, so we can't just pick to say we want 1 or 2 or 3, and then we'd have to have the 4 of those go together.
Yes, Mrs. Yardley, that would be correct, because they would go opposite
Right,
each
because for
other.
the scheduling, we would need all 4.
Exactly.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Don't we also need to get, wouldn't we need to change the contract regarding the minutes to be able to implement those positions?
So Mrs. Spence Clemens, we have requested 2 additional librarians. That was also part of the program improvement, which really does not affect the minutes. The other 2, the STEM and the world language teacher, that would be based on what we recommended with the elementary scheduling committee with the 45 minutes. Because right now we're running the gamut of 30 to 50 to 45 to 55 across the board with all the specials. So what we recommended was, which is part of the contract, is the 45-minute across the board. That STEM and world language would alternate in that 45-minute block.
Right, so that all goes hand in
Can you speak up?
hand. I said, so that all goes hand in hand. I was just making a comment. Except
Yes,
for the librarians.
Well, the librarians
Is that
absolutely,
separate?
right, they wouldn't
Right.
have anything to do with that. The number of minutes would fluctuate. Is it a possibility to try to make that happen? Perhaps, but really the 45-minute blocks is what we're looking at to make all of this work.
Okay, so I just think it's difficult to make that decision without that change. The other question I had, as far as the security recommendations that we had, who decided how much security we need and how often often was that, did we have our security officers making the determination? Did we have the police chief coming in and giving an assessment? Or who was making the determination of this is how many security officers we need, and this is where we need them, and this is how long, and those kinds of things?
We actually had several meetings on that, and it was a combination of people. We had the high school administration, we had security, Mr. Loeffler was there, Mr. Daubert was there. Not sure if I'm missing anybody else.
Mr. Boner was there.
Mr. Boner, right? And we basically said, based on what we have now, what do you feel the needs are? We said, shoot for the stars, tell us exactly, how much you think you would need. And then we said, well, maybe we could make some of these people part-time and have them work in the evening, because if you remember, we did recently hire 2 new substitute security guards for the evening shift. So Mr. Daubert had to put them in the budget. So it was a group decision based on need. So we feel what they're asking for is fair.
So will we have 2, because some nights we have 2 out here. Will we have 2 out here in the evenings? Is that the plan?
If we have activities going on in the gym and the auditorium, the plan is to have 1 at each door and then a floater. So 1 full-time, which we have right now, and the other 2 would be at the doors.
Okay, and then I just wanted to also, you had mentioned you added $130,000 because of the attorneys. So are you counting that as budgeting that for all of next year? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, so we took the information we have now, and we took the hours that our current solicitor has worked this year, annualized them for the entire year, and then took the difference in the price, and we made that budget adjustment. Now, we understand that that may change, but that's the best number I have to work with right now. So if that number does come down, then we can adjust. But at this point, we would assume that's the worst case scenario.
Okay, because that's temporary, and
Right.
We're interviewing
Right.
before the next board meeting.
Yes.
So by the next board meeting, that would already change. So then I guess by the next finance meeting, we would have completely different numbers. And then in addition to that, there was a lot of additional legal work that was being done that I think is getting changed, so that the hours may decrease from that as well. So I think that's something that we could take into consideration as well with those numbers. Right to know being one example. Other examples I don't know that I can get into at this meeting, but that's something that we could take into account as well, I think.
Okay, any other questions on the positions at this time? Okay. So the next slide is the budget timeline. Again, to show you this each month. PDE is to notify us by May 1st with our state allocation, which we should receive in the next few days. Of course, we're here on May 2nd at our finance meeting. We talked about May 14th as the first vote for a budget, and then May 31st, we would have to make the budget available for public inspection. That would be the deadline. We would, of course, make it available as soon as the first budget is passed by the board. We'll be back again for another finance meeting on June 6th, so we can talk about any changes that we would make. For instance, the solicitor rates when we know what they are. And then we have to advertise prior to the adoption of the final budget. And then our final budget adoption date is June 18th. And that's when we will do the resolutions also for the taxes and the homestead, farmstead exclusion and so forth. And then as soon as that's over, we turn all the tax information over to the local tax collectors, and they begin the process of preparing the tax bills to be out in the hands of the taxpayers by July 1st. So that's a pretty tight timeline. June 18th and to turn over and have the tax bills out, but, so we would definitely want to continue on the timeline we have laid out here, and so that we're able to get the tax bills out in a timely basis. The next page, again, we looked at this last month, but here's our options at this point. We could keep all the expenditures that we have in the budget. We could choose to balance the budget, and we would do that by raising the real estate mills by just over $1 million, roughly $33.18 to that median assessed value property. We could not raise taxes, and we could use a commitment of fund balance in the amount needed to balance the budget. So in that case, we would pass an unbalanced budget with a commitment of, like I said, a commitment of fund balance, and then that fund balance would be used to balance the budget, basically. Third item is we could remove a number of the requested positions that are on the list on slide 8 in order to balance the budget. Or the fourth option is to do any combination of those 3 options listed above. Next slide is our fund balances for the last 3 years. Total general fund balance has remained relatively stable, about $16.5 million. It's actually down a little bit from where it was 2 years ago. And we've just under $18 million in the capital projects fund. So we have taken away a number of commitments over the last 2 years, moved more money towards the unassigned, and really the reason for that is those commitments really weren't needed. The board budgeted, put an amount in the budget each year and has continued to do that for buses, for transportation buses, so there's no need to set aside a commitment of fund balance for that. The board's funding our needs, which we appreciate. The future retirement rate increase, we brought that down about $2.5 million. Non-routine maintenance, we removed that commitment because the board funds non-routine maintenance each year in the budget. Technology initiatives, we took that out because the board funds the technology department each year through the general fund budget. What's needed is what is funded. And you can see our commitment of $337,000 for this year's, the balance this year's, the current year's budget. So these are unassigned fund balance is about $9.5 million, and the total fund balance 16.5. So we're at the point where questions, discussions, and most importantly, defining a path for us to move to the May 14th vote.
Thank you, Mr. Dauber. I want to comment before we start other discussion that I believe this budget is in good shape, certainly relative to most budgets at this time of year. The fact that we're within striking distance of no increase or a small commitment of relatively small commitment of fund balance, I think is both a good thing and a sign of the situation that this budget is in. I want to thank you and Dr. Radigan and the people who work with you for getting this to this point for the board. And I personally want to comment on these positions. I think, as Mrs. Banis-Clemens said, the contract does contain a table and language which, in the elementary situation, forces us to schedule specials in a very special and specific way, not only by time but by grade level. It makes it difficult for our principals at the elementary level to schedule. We are in negotiations, and my hope is that we will be able to resolve that during our negotiations to the satisfaction of the administration and the board, as well as, I believe, the teachers, at least those who were on our elementary scheduling committee, who believe that this could be improved dramatically with the addition of the STEM teachers and the exploratory language teachers. My preference would be to keep those in the budget, hoping that we can resolve this issue and move forward. And if we don't, and we use fund balances, as I'm guessing we may, to cover the difference between the expenditures and revenues as they're now stated, those numbers simply wouldn't be expended, and that value would decrease significantly. It wouldn't go away with 4 teachers, but it would certainly make a big dent in that $664,000 issue. And I also would like to reiterate that I am not in favor of removing the $53,100 for the program improvement. I think that's a mistake. I also want to make my yearly pitch that I believe librarians are extremely valuable, and we should have one in each elementary school, and they should be there to, teach not just how to use a book or how to use a computer, but also all the skills that are related to media in this day and age. And so I think those positions are very important. They're a loss that we incurred in years past, and we can correct this year without a great deal of pain and suffering. Now's the time to do that. Other comments? Mr. Krause.
Thank you, Dr. Yarnell. Mr. Dahlberg, thank you. This budget looks in good shape, as Dr. Yarnell has indicated. A couple of questions. Can you tell me where we are revenue versus expenses year to date? Are we on the plus side, minus side? Just give me a broad brush.
Broad brush, we're always ahead, revenues to expenses, until we get to the year end, because we collect our lion's share of our revenue in the first 6 months of the year in the real estate taxes, which is $80 million. So we'll always run ahead. Revenues will always be above expenses until we get to the end of the year, and we finish all of our, we go into July paying our, June bills and early August. But overall, the budget, when we look at our actual expenditures to budget, with a broad brush, we're doing fine. We don't see any evidence of a problem as far as overrunning this budget in the current year.
Okay. And your best guess how we'll finish up on the plus side?
I wish I had a crystal ball,
All right.
I believe we'll finish on the plus side. But
okay. Second question, you'll have to remind me, percentage-wise, what is our total uncommitted now, currently?
we're just under 8%. We're about 7.5%. We're limited by law to be 8% of our budgeted expenditures.
Okay. And that was my second question. What are we permitted by law?
Yep.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Well, let me give one of my usual rants that I give at this time of year about your comment, how important it is to pass a budget, in this case by June 18th. And as someone who pays taxes to another school district in Pennsylvania, the one where I grew up in Center County, that school district never passes their budget in a timely fashion, presumably because of their dependence upon the state. But in any case, they never pass it in a timely fashion, or at least timely enough. So their real estate bills never come out in early July as the ones here do. And I remember a time when that occurred in this district, and it got us into a cash crunch when we were not well-placed with a fund balance, which was the situation at the time. So the bill that I get from the Bellefonte Area School District in central Pennsylvania comes any time between mid-July and early August. Sometimes they squeeze that discount period and it's through the end of September. Sometimes it moves another month. It's, in my opinion, not very good fiscal fiduciary responsibility on the part of that school district. Easy for me to say, but I do pay them some taxes, so I guess I get to make that comment from afar. But I think that it's very important that we pass a budget on May 14th. It, as Mr. Dahlberg has said, it can and often, not always, but often does change, at least in some small fraction. Maybe we'll know something more from the state by June 18th. I'm certainly not going to bet any of my money or the school district's money on that, but that's a possibility. But I think it is important that we pass a budget and then come back on the 18th of June and pass the budget. So that's my rant for the evening. Mrs. Yardley.
I had a question. Mr. Daubert, at the last meeting, I had asked about the future retirement rate increase that's committed in
Yes.
the fund balance. And I was just wondering if you had any suggestions, because we have that money sitting there, and we generally haven't used it because we can't just say, let's just use this, right, because it creates a hole in the budget when that money is gone. So I was just wondering if you had, in the last month, had any suggestions on a way to use that would be financially responsible, but then maybe help with this, the deficit that we have.
So with the deficit that we have, no matter how you plug that, if you plug that in any way other than a recurring revenue source, that will create a hole which will inevitably climb each year. As you saw, we went from 337 this year, and now we're looking at over 600,000 for next year. I would expect that to climb again the following year if a recurring revenue is not put in place. And that, relatively speaking, in the size of our budget, $135 million, 600,000 is not even 0.5%. So relatively, we're not speaking about a great deal of money. So in order to answer your first question about plugging the hole, the only way to plug it completely is to do it with a recurring revenue, or you cut other expenditures in the budget. Now, the fund balance that is set aside for the retirement increases, many districts did this a number of years ago when the retirement rate started to climb, and they put money away and they committed it to fund balance for retirement. The goal though, from my standpoint as a very conservative business administrator, is to find a way to fund that every year within the budget, and to plug that hole, and to not rely on a source of revenue that's not recurring or renewing in order to plug those holes. So what we could do for $600,000 this year, if we wanted to use a commitment of fund balance, we could pull from that $6 million. Okay, but that doesn't answer our recurring ongoing question that eventually at some point, we'll have to settle. And maybe that's another year down the road where it's now $1.5 million, and we put $1.5 million of tax on, not $3 million of tax to plug that gap. So we're very lucky here that we have the reserves that we could do that for a year or two. There's other things you could do with that money. It could be used for capital projects. The board could vote to transfer a portion of that money or all of that money to capital projects if it wanted to. There are a number of projects out there that the board has talked about, board members have talked about, doing. They're big projects. So those are the real options that I see for the use of those funds.
Right, so it could be something like air conditioning the elementary school, something like that.
Something like
that money, if we transferred it. What about, it was mentioned at the last meeting, suggestion that our debt service is going to drop significantly within about 6 years?
6 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything, would you consider looking at that like as an offset to using this money towards, is that how you would look at it, or are they just completely separate and you need to keep them separate?
Do you mean prepaid debt service with some money?
No, but just saying we know that there's going to be a decrease in the budget in 6 years, and then looking at it, that if we're using some of this money.
To draw in that money to yeah.
Right, and then when the debt service dropped, then move
exactly.
that money over into paying for
Right.
the PSERS costs.
Right. Yes.
So that's a possibility also.
It is a possibility. It is a possibility. We, Amelia and I take these numbers, our final numbers every year, and our, from our AFR and our budget numbers, and then we look at progression charts out, 4 or 5 years, and we're trying to make sure that, if a gap doesn't get plugged, it doesn't get too big, that it's unsustainable whenever we finally do decide to plug it. So we look at those scenarios going out. What happens if we increase teacher salaries by X%? What's that look like 4 years out? What happens if we increase, if the whole budget goes up by 2%? What happens if our assessed value grows by 2% a year, 3% a year? So we look at that, we use that model, and we look at these numbers, and we try to determine where we're headed, and if we see potential problems, we certainly want to tell you, we'll tell you about those problems. So, right now Pennridge is a healthy district fiscally, and our bond rating shows that. We have one of the higher bond ratings in the state. That's good. And just by reducing fund balance sometimes, using fund balance will have a negative impact on your bond rating, which then increases the borrowing costs. And so it's a very delicate match, mix and match of you want to be responsible. You don't necessarily want to raise taxes every year. We didn't raise taxes this year. I'm not let's tax everybody as much as we can kind of person. I live here too, just like the rest of you, so we all feel that pain. But we have to be careful how big we let the gap get before we put a sustainable revenue source in place to fund it. So.
Anyone else? What are we taking to the table on the 14th as a budget?
So I think I hear to put the textbook money back in. I think everyone can everyone live with that?
People have not spoken, but I think my sense is the board is not particularly interested in raising taxes this year.
Okay.
And I think that, and I'm not speaking for other people, I'm not even necessarily speaking for myself. I'm sensing what the consensus is across the board without anyone saying it, since we aren't saying it. So with that, then it seems to me that we are looking at the either the reduction in positions, which I'm not in favor of, or the use of fund balance. Yes, Mr. Krause.
Dr. Yardell, thank you. From my perspective, based on where we are with balances, based on what's happened over the last couple of years, revenues versus expenses, I would be in favor of using fund balance to cover this and not incurring a tax increase this year.
Mrs. Walters, you have been deadly silent.
Always quiet.
I assume you have some opinion on this
I'm
subject.
always a listener. I second what you said and what Bill says. I'm in favor of not raising taxes and feeling healthy fund balance.
Mrs. Venus Clemens?
Didn't you say what did you say, we're at 7.5% uncommitted, and isn't the healthy range 6 to 8?
The legal range is top is 8. A healthy range.
I thought you said before there's like a recommended range or something, though. I thought it was 6 to 8.
They don't let you go over. They don't let a district our size go over 8. I would say 6 to 8 is healthier than 4.
Right, because I think you were saying we were at the upper end of that.
We're getting close to the upper end, but each year, remember, our budget grows each year, so that number automatically allowable goes up each year also.
Right. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that, and I also just wanted to say, I think these elementary positions are important, and I really hope that we can